You know, he preaches from a stage that was once home to NBA champions. His TV audience, a cool 10 million Americans every single week. He's that smiling pastor with a $100 million net worth and a message of nonstop hope. But Joel Osteen is also one of the most polarizing religious figures in the country. He sparks these huge debates about wealth, about faith, and about what a church really owes its community. So the big question is, how did one guy build a religious empire that draws in millions, while at the same time infuriating so many others? Let's get into it.
To really wrap your head around the scale of this whole phenomenon, you have to start with the building. I mean, this is not your typical church with pews and stained glass. Nope, it's the former Compaq Center, a professional sports arena in Houston, Texas, that holds 16,800 people. It's a space that was literally designed for a spectacle. And trust me, the message preached from its stage is just as grand.
And this quote, it just cuts right to the heart of the whole conflict. You have critics, like the late Joel Osteen, who argue that Osteen's message is basically a kind of cotton candy theology. You know, a high-energy pep rally that's all about personal gain. Now, that is a world away from traditional Christian teachings about sin and sacrifice, and it creates this tension that really defines the entire Joel Osteen phenomenon.
So how on earth did a ministry that started in a dusty old feed store blow up into a global media powerhouse? Well, it's a story of ambition, television, and a really crucial passing of the torch.
It all kicked off back in 1959 with Joel's dad, John Osteen, in a converted feed store. He built the foundation for a solid 40 years. But the explosive growth? That started in 1999, when Joel, who'd been working for years behind the scenes producing his dad's TV broadcasts, very reluctantly took the pulpit. His telegenic style was just a perfect fit for TV, and boom! Just 6 years later, they make this incredibly audacious move into the Compaq Center. And get this, just this year, 2024, they officially paid off the staggering $100 million loan for its renovation.
Look, this wasn't just about getting a bigger building. This was a statement. By turning a secular temple of sport into a house of worship, Osteen basically cemented his ministry's place right in the heart of American culture. It totally set the stage for the massive media reach they have today.
But what is the message that fills this massive arena and gets broadcast to millions? Well, to understand Joel Osteen, you first have to understand the controversial theology that fuels his entire brand, the prosperity gospel.
Okay, so at its core, the prosperity gospel teaches that God wants his followers to be prosperous. And we're not just talking spiritually, but materially. The idea is that faith, positive thinking, and yes, financial donations to the church can unlock these divine blessings. You can see the appeal, right? It totally shifts the focus from some reward in the afterlife to achieving your best life right here, right now.
This quote from Osteen, it perfectly captures the whole mechanism. It's a key idea from a movement called word of faith, the idea that your words have actual creative power. So, if you declare, "I am blessed," or "I am successful," those things will supposedly come looking for you. Now, critics argue this puts all the power in human hands, not God's. And even worse, it dangerously suggests that being poor is just a failure of your faith.
For years and years, Osteen's brand was this carefully polished image of nonstop positivity and success. But in August 2017, that image collided head-on with the fury of a natural disaster and a total firestorm of public criticism.
So let's set the scene. Hurricane Harvey just slams into Houston. It causes catastrophic flooding and it displaces tens of thousands of people. The city is in a desperate state of emergency and people are looking for shelter absolutely anywhere they can find it. Naturally, all eyes turn to the biggest venue in the city, Lakewood Church. But the initial message that got posted on social media claimed the building was inaccessible because of the flooding. This was the first official word from them as the crisis was really starting to unfold.
But here's the thing. Almost immediately, social media users who lived near the church started posting their own photos and videos, and they told a very different story, showing what looked like clear streets all around the arena. The public outcry was swift, it was brutal, and this narrative of a wealthy church turning away desperate families just took hold online like wildfire.
So this created a really clear standoff. The accusation was simple and it was damning. The megachurch closed its doors. The defense from Osteen and the church was that this was a false narrative. They said the building itself was at risk of flooding and that opening before it was deemed safe would have been totally irresponsible. Now, the church did eventually open as a shelter 2 days later, but for a lot of people, the damage to its public image was already done.
And that whole Harvey crisis, it just amplified a long-simmering criticism surrounding Lakewood Church, its money. So let's take a look at the finances that underpin this massive operation. Joel Osteen's personal net worth is estimated to be over $100 million. Now, it is really important to note, he has not taken a salary from Lakewood Church since way back in 2005. His wealth comes mainly from his dozens of best-selling books and all the ventures that go along with that. Still, his pretty lavish lifestyle is a frequent target for people who question his message.
Now, as for the church itself, its annual expenses back in 2017 were a staggering $90 million. You can see on this chart a huge investment in weekly services and, crucially, over $25 million dedicated just to the TV ministry, which, is the engine of its global reach.
But this is the number that critics always seize on. Out of that $90 million budget, just $1.2 million, that's about 1.3%, was spent on missions and outreach. So for critics, this number raises a really fundamental question. Is the ministry more focused on its own production than on the charitable work that many people believe should be the absolute heart of a church's mission?
The controversies around Lakewood aren't just happening in a vacuum. To really understand the challenges it faces, we need to zoom out and look at a profound shift that's happening all across America's religious landscape. This number is just stunning. Today, nearly a third of all American adults, a full 30%, say they're religiously unaffiliated. They're often called the knowns because when you ask them for their religious affiliation on a form, they check the box for none of the above. And research points to a really powerful cultural shift driving this trend. There's this growing distrust of large, wealthy institutions in general, and that includes organized religion. And younger generations, especially, are increasingly searching for authenticity in real community, not necessarily the high-gloss production and celebrity spectacle of the megachurch model.
And that brings us right back to that massive arena in Houston. The story of Joel Osteen really reflects a nation that's grappling with its faith. And while Lakewood's online reach is still incredibly formidable, the rise of the knowns asks a really critical question. In a world that is searching for authenticity, what's the future for a faith that was built for an arena?